All right, everybody. So we were just going to start today with a quick introduction into geography. And one of the questions that I asked you on the first day of school was, what do you think geography is? And every year I get the answer, oh, it's the study of rocks. And well, that's close, but not quite. Um, Geography is really the study of the earth and the ways that people interact with the earth. And it helps to explain why people live the way that they do and where they live and why they live there, right? And it really helps to answer a lot of questions about the past. So it helps kind of connect the globe and helps us understand history, which I think is really important. So we're going to learn about something called the five themes of geography today. And those are the five main things that all aspects of geography can be really separated into, right? So the first one is location. And a location can either be an absolute thing or a relative thing. If you're talking about an absolute location, that is a location that's measured by longitude and latitude. And you might be wondering, what is longitude and latitude? So if you look at a globe or a map and it has lines that are running vertically or horizontally on it, those are lines of longitude or latitude. Lines of longitude run the long way, the ones that run vertically up and down, and the lines of latitude run across the globe, right? So we'll learn how to use longitude and latitude probably next week. But for now, all you need to know is that absolute locations are measured in those ways, right? A relative location is when you use another location's location to describe where something is. So I might say Martin Middle School is east, or rather south of Sip and Dip, right? Or Pierce Field is next to the water, even though it's not super close, but it is still there, right? You could also say that absolute locations are more of an exact location of a specific place, whereas relative locations are more so, right? I might say a relative location example would be New England is north of Florida, right? If you're looking at a globe and you're using your direction, which would be a compass, right? You're finding out that, okay, New England is located north of Florida. And that is correct, right? So that's a relative location. The next theme is place. And place describes either a description of a location. Within those places, there are physical characteristics and human characteristics that make up that spot. Physical characteristics include land, climate, which means like how warm it is or how cold it is, right? Bodies of water, animals, plants, those are all physical. Could you think of an example of different physical features that you would describe New England with? One that I would describe New England with would be rocky, right? The soil is very rocky. You might say mountainous because there are mountains in the north. You might add that the climate would be moderate to even temperate. Bodies of water that I would think of, man, some major bodies of water in New England you've got to include the Atlantic Ocean. Animals that are specific to New England, there are some, right? Plants, those are all physical characteristics. Now, human characteristics are more of what make the place come to life. Now, those are things that are tied specifically to humans, like languages, religions, populations, jobs that people do. Those are all things that are human, right? And those all form the description of a place, right? So when you think of a place, I want you to think of an actual place. That might be Argentina, right? Or South America. And in those places, they all have different religions that they speak and different customs that they follow. And their populations are very different from other places, right? Jobs are very different because their way of life is different. The next one is human-environment interaction. So that's how we use or abuse the earth. Now you might think that, most of the ways that humans interact with earth are not necessarily always positive, but there are definitely positive interactions like using green energy, right? A negative interaction, though, might be like when you go to the beach and you see a trash bag in the water. Or I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen those videos of sea life that end up with trash interrupting their way of life and potentially causing harm. I know I've seen videos of humans helping animals right, that are in distress because of trash. Um, Another way to look at it is any way that we modify the earth or abuse it. That's a negative interaction, right? Um, Although humans really can't exist as a civilization unless we modify the earth. So that's something that there's a certain level of this that we have to live with, right? The next theme is movement. Now, movement identifies how people, ideas, and goods are linked together around the earth. And movement is the exchange of ideas to new locations to change that culture. Movement includes the migrations of people, which means how people have moved throughout the earth throughout time, right? That's a mass movement, right? A migration is a lot of people moving all at once, right? Like when the quote unquote new world was discovered in South America and in North America, and people moved from Europe and other regions of the world to inhabit these lands that were previously occupied, but not by a lot of people, right? Relatively. Another example is new products or goods. When I say goods, I want you guys to think of products, things that you can purchase, right? Moving into new areas that change the way that things are done. Could you guys think of an example of something that has changed the way that we do business or that the world operates in the last maybe 30 years? I mean, so thinking back to 1990, what has changed in the world? Um, you guys have grown up with this your whole life, and you probably use it every day. And when I say probably, I mean definitely. It's the internet, right? So technology has completely changed the way that people live in the world. And that's an example that I always use as a good that's changed the world. Uh, I know if you ask a lot of your teachers, they could tell you about their life before the internet, right, versus their life after. And the internet has completely changed the way we look at school. I mean, we have students who are able to connect with us virtually via their house, right? And we even have distance learning and had distance learning in the spring because of the internet. So school during a pandemic is really possible because of the internet. So that completely changes the way that people are living their lives. And you could argue that it changes the way that we're buying other purchases, right? Other goods, I should say. Um, if you look at a company like Amazon that operates remotely and through the internet, right? I mean, that's changing the way that people shop, which then changes the economy, which has an effect on the country. It's really everything's connected. And the last theme is regions. So a region is an area or multiple areas that share something in common. And these things can be physical, meaning like they have physical features like commonalities of land. Whereas in New England, you have like really rocky soil, oftentimes a shared interaction with the Atlantic Ocean. Um, right? Those are some ways that areas share commonalities of land. A human interaction that, or a human characteristic that's shared would be commonalities of people. And people can be defined by their languages that they speak, the religions that they practice, their customs, their traditions, and their values, right? And one thing that is a regional trait that I identified as a young kid was the fact that everyone in the United States and even throughout the world has different accents and they speak different languages, right? So if you go down south, when someone wants to say you all, they don't usually pronounce you all as you all. It's usually y'all, right? Or when you look at even foods that are commonly eaten in different regions of the United States, never mind the world, we eat vastly different things based on where we live. One thing that I can think of is a story from when I was younger. I was just not even far from Rhode Island, right? I was in Connecticut and I asked for a coffee milk. And the waitress looked at me like I was crazy. I was 12 years old. She thought, all right, I'll give this kid a coffee with some milk. And anybody from Rhode Island should know that coffee milk is this delicious milk with coffee syrup in it that really is one of my favorite drinks in the world. But if you move outside of Rhode Island, coffee milk isn't super common. And the reason that that waitress had given me a weird look was because they didn't have coffee milk and didn't even know what it was. So when she came back with a coffee with milk, my parents laughed because I didn't drink coffee and I still don't drink coffee to this day. So that's a regional practice. that is also an example of a human characteristic. Okay? So you might be wondering why the 5 themes are important to us. They're really important because they help us organize different themes of geography, different parts of geography, into nice, neat little categories. Um, we could really look at the world and kind of understand why the world works the way that it does through these 5 themes, right? The way that people interact with each other, the way that ideas move and that people move around the globe, the way that we use or abuse the earth, and then really landforms, right? How do landforms shape the way that we live, and why do civilizations form where they do? These are all questions that we're going to answer this year.